We're back at it, folks, with another breakdown from the start of Season 2 of Prime Video's The Rings of Power. Today we've got a dark wizard to contend with, some deep-cut name drops courtesy of Círdan, and the reveal at long last of ANNATAR. As always, we're going to dive into the story, point out the lore references, and do some theorizing. Be sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you never miss a breakdown or a Tolkien lore video here on Nerd of the Rings. Episode 2 opens with the same shot of magma that the stranger had in his vision in Episode 1. We cut to a wide shot to confirm this is indeed Mount Doom. We then get a nice little map transition that shows some kind of darkness spreading from Mount Doom all the way up to Khazad-dûm. We get a nice wide shot of most of the entry to Khazad-dûm. We see two massive dwarven statues, of which we can get a hint of the scale as the camera passes into the mountain. These things are enormous. One has an axe and the other has a hammer, and they seem to be looking down, either at the entryway far below or perhaps at the balcony in this shot. Based on the map's movement, this is the east gate into Khazad-dûm. The one we saw Elrond enter in Season 1 was the west gate, which will eventually be replaced by the Doors of Durin. And we'll get a hint that that development is on the way in this very episode. Real quick, another detail we can see on the map is the Ninglor River, an Elvish name meaning gold water for what is more commonly known as the Gladden. The Gladden Fields here is where Isildur would later lose the One Ring, and where Gollum would claim it many centuries later. We get a cool shot of the lighting system the dwarves use to bring light into Khazad-dûm so they can get crops, and good old vitamin D. I've enjoyed this particular design element of Khazad-dûm since we saw it in Season 1. In Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf mentions Moria once having great windows on the mountainside and huge shafts leading out to light the upper reaches. And one such shaft is what casts light upon Balin's tomb in the Chamber of Mazarbul. Durin and Disa are shopping at the market, and we find the fallout of Durin being cast out by his father in Season 1. Money is tighter when you're not the crown prince. We get a nice moment and some humor when Disa says she wouldn't trade Durin for a mine full of fire opals, which led me on a fun Google journey to find they're pretty sweet looking and form near volcanoes. The more you know. Disa feels a reverberation and all heck breaks loose as the areas containing their light reflectors collapse, leaving Khazad-dûm in darkness. We then hear the Howard Shore title theme as we get the beginning credits, which actually has a lot of new elements this year, and some big references. We get these red grains of sand, which initially form what we later see is the table Celebrimbor has set up for the 7 dwarven rings. We get a close-up shot of the swirling effect at one of the ring spots, which is reminiscent to how they created the rings in Season 1. Next we see what I initially thought to be 10 circles, but I think this one at the top middle might not be an actual ring, meaning this could represent the 9 for men. Otherwise, it could be 9 for men plus this central one with the red representing the one to rule them all. We then get a wide shot where we see the 19 rings, all but the one represented. Across the top we have the 9 for men, in the middle section we have the 7 for the dwarves, and in the innermost portion we have the 3 for the elves. The image then forms into a tree, likely representing the Tree of Linden, although another option would be the White Tree of Númenor. Speaking of Númenor, the next image is a crown with 7 stars, a symbol with ties specifically to Earendil. This symbol, along with that of the White Tree, is taken by Earendil after the downfall to be his standard, a banner that Aragorn himself would one day unfurl. We then get a blink and you'll miss it allusion to the Doors of Durin. The arch being the most prominent portion, we can see some hints of the 2 trees represented along the sides. We then see the outline of the Balrog's head, followed by a bit of a sun motif, which we've seen come up in Númenor. However, this certainly appears to instead be a menacing and a bit bloodshot eye. In the next frame, we can see most clearly the golden circle within the eye, possibly representing the one ring Sauron will forge. After getting a few formations where I didn't recognize anything, we briefly see Sauron's crown form in the center. Back to the episode, we see Galadriel planting some Alpharin seeds like Adar did in Season 1. Again, Alpharin is what men call Symbol Muna, the flowers that famously cover the graves of the much later Rohirrim peoples. She's standing in front of her brother Finrod's tree carving as Celebrimbor approaches. It becomes apparent pretty quickly this is a vision, and we see the seeds Galadriel plants grow into vines that attack Celebrimbor, who mentioned that he had a visitor in Eregion. Celebrimbor then speaks the opening 3 lines of the full ring verse in Black Speech. These are indeed the words that Celebrimbor and the other elves hear as Sauron speaks them when he creates the One Ring to rule them all. Fun fact, Tolkien played around with different numbers before settling on the ones we now know so well. At one point, he considered 12 for men. At another, he had the numbers swapped for elves and men, stating, 9 for the elven kings under moon and star, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 3 for mortal men that wander far, 1 for the dark lord on his dark throne, in the land of Mordor, where the shadows are. Celebrimbor is killed by the vines and turns into a horrific perversion of their wooden memorials. We cut to the elves chatting about scout reports of Sauron and Adar when Galadriel comes out of her vision. More on her vision and how her ring plays a role in that in a bit. She tells Gil-galad that Sauron needs rings to achieve his goal of bending the minds and wills of all people. As Gil-galad makes the point that Sauron is alone and Eregion is well protected, we see an elvish map of Middle-earth. In the corner we see a depiction of Elrond's father, Earendil, with the light of a Silmaril as he sails. As we talked about last season, he and Elrond's mother Elwing went to Valinor to ask the Valar to intervene against Morgoth. After the War of Wrath and Morgoth's defeat, Earendil sails the sky, Silmaril upon his brow as a star. After a brief flash of Sauron waiting in Eregion, Galadriel finally tells it straight to Gil-galad, saying that this ring is affecting her. She mentions getting glimpses of the unseen world, and I gotta say, I'm not 100% sure what this show means by unseen world. As an elf who lived in Valinor, Galadriel already exists in both the seen and unseen world. Let me know what you think of this concept in this show in the comments, because it kinda just feels like a phrase they throw out to sound ominous right now. They get around to the fact that the ring has enhanced Galadriel's ability of foresight, something we see not only elves, but on more rare occasions men, have in Tolkien's world. A big trait of a ring of power is to enhance the wearer's natural abilities, so the idea that it could enhance an elf's foresight checks out. Gil-galad confides that he's also had his foresight amplified, and I gotta say, it's nice that these two are actually working together and being straight with one another. Galadriel wants to be sent to Eregion, but Gil-galad says she can't face him alone. Galadriel thinks she's the only one who can slay him because she knows his mind. But judging how well that went over for Adar in episode 1... Anyway, we're back in Eregion where Sauron continues to wait, gives some googly eyes to Celebrimbor's assistant, and gets some pity from her. But not from Brimby for now. We then see that the messengers from Gil-galad did not make it to Eregion. Their corpses are dragged off with chains, and initially I thought this might be the orcs sent to follow Sauron. But instead, I think this might actually be the Barrow-wights, or possibly a creature that we'll meet in episode 3. Time will tell, but I think if there were orcs, we would have seen them here. Next we see the rider who was tracking the stranger last episode come up to a desert structure of 3 buildings. We can see his flag definitely has an eye symbol. Again, I hope this is the actual Eye of Sauron because I think it looks pretty legit and would make a cool standard for his servants going forward in the show. We also see some statues that kind of give off wizard vibes, and we can see this one closest to the rider seems to have an orb in his hand. Now at this time, the 7 Palantiri that exist in Middle-earth should all still be in Numenor. While we don't know exactly how many Seeing Stones were made by Celebrimbor's father Feanor in total, we know the 7 that existed outside of Valinor were given to the men of Numenor. And it's here that we find the new wizard character in the show, as one of his followers has her hands cut open to drip blood on the ground. And let's face it, no good guy gets up to this ominous and dark kind of stuff, so he's probably bad news. The wizard swirls his staff around a bit, and the moths form into a person, and guess who's back? Back again. Shady's back, to give a report on Sauron taking a new form to deceive his enemies. The wizard asks about the Istar, mentioning hearing rumors from mumakil thieves. What's interesting here is that mumakil are not known for being in Rhûn. Rather, they are from the lands of Harad. quite some distance from the Easterlings. While the Easterlings would be allies under Sauron in the Third Age, in the early to mid-Second Age, the Haradrim actually have friendship with Númenor. No doubt one of the big questions this season is, who is this wizard? The promo images we've seen have led some to guess that this is Saruman and the stranger is Gandalf. An understandable guess based on some of the not-so-subtle Peter Jackson-inspired hints the stranger dropped last year, and the general high and mighty evil vibe Ciarán Hinds gives off. However, I actually think the way they're setting these guys up on opposite sides could be indirect confirmation of my theory that these two are in fact blue wizards. Aside from Gandalf's book declaration that he doesn't go to the east, the simple fact that having Saruman and Gandalf antagonistic toward each other this early in their history would be incredibly odd. Saruman is meant to be a traitor in the later Third Age. The greatest of the Order turned against them. It's hard to surprise people with changing sides if you were already evil to begin with. Instead, what I think the show is doing, and what I said a long time ago would be really cool if they did, is taking inspiration from Tolkien's two accounts of the Blue Wizards. I dive deeper into the history of this in my video on the Blue Wizards, but in short, Tolkien originally said they failed their purpose, founding secret cults and magic traditions. However, toward the end of his life, Tolkien amended this, saying they helped the Easterlings who rebelled against Sauron, and that without them, Sauron's forces of the East would have outnumbered the peoples of the West in both the Second and Third Age conflicts. Basically, I think we're getting both in this story. The stranger will be the good blue wizard, helping rally the good men of the East, while this new wizard will be the one founding cults, which he kinda seems to have already done. The masked man gives a report to the wizard, and we find that his people have a curse upon their flesh. He offers to bring in the Istar in exchange for them being healed. Also in this scene, I noticed Hinds' wizard has some epic eyebrows. Always good to see big eyebrows on a wizard. Next, the hobbits are trying to come up with names for the stranger, and one Nori throws out is Fredegar, a nod to the fifth hobbit of The Lord of the Rings, Fredegar Fatty Bulger, who stays in the Shire rather than accompany Frodo and the others. They're really playing up the name thing though, which is the one thing making me think they might make him Gandalf. But I sure hope not. It's kind of wild because there's kind of a lot hinging on his identity here. Taking the Blue Wizards route would be pretty inspired and cool, but if we end up with some wonky version of Gandalf and perhaps Saruman, it'll just cause a plethora of lore issues. And honestly, in my opinion, just taking the lazy option because they're recognizable characters. The trio goes on to talk about their dwindling food options, and am I the only one who looked at the hobbits and thought, don't you have acorns, which are indeed edible, in your hair? Is this weird fashion choice worth starving for? As the helmet crew show up, we can see their horses have blue markings on their right legs. Not sure what this could symbolize, but we do see the men here have blue on their chest plates as well. Perhaps this is a nod to them serving a blue wizard. The trio avoids detection and decides to go on the waterless desert route. Back at Khazad-dûm, we see the exterior damage caused by the collapses, as the right dwarf statue is now missing its head. Their crops are dying and we hear dwarf women talking about dark omens across all the dwarven realms. And it's nice to get an acknowledgement that Khazad-dûm isn't the only dwarf realm. This gives me some measure of hope that when rings get handed out, it will actually be to different realms and not just Khazad-dûm. We know that there are 4 clans of the dwarves who actually live in Rhûn: the Iron Fists, Stiffbeards, Blacklocks, and Stonefoots. At this point in Khazad-dûm, there are the Longbeards native to the realm, but also refugees from Beleriand in the Firebeards and Broadbeams. I gotta say, it would be nice if some of the dwarf women with speaking roles had full-on beards. We get a report from Narvi that the eruption of Mount Doom actually caused the collapse of their shafts and they can't find a safe path to dig. I get the reverberations causing a cave-in, but I'm not quite certain how that makes it impossible to repair or dig new shafts. Anyway, Disa and the Disets sing to the rocks, and the last shaft collapses, which is like the opposite of what they're going for, so that's a bummer. Now, a quick note on Narvi here. He's a pretty significant character from the books. He has a great friendship with Celebrimbor, and most likely a minor spoiler for this season, together they create the Doors of Durin. Disa and Durin III have this great little family chat about the feud between father and son, And I gotta say, I think the bits about stubbornness and wounded hearts, here and in the next episode, is some of the best writing in the early going of the season. Disa mentions the peaks of Zoraxagil falling. This is the same peak where Durin's tower is built and where Gandalf would fight the Balrog. Meanwhile, Durin IV gets picked on by bullies at work. In the background of the following dinner scene, we see the tree Elrond gave Durin over 20 years ago seems to still be alive, but it's shrouded in darkness. Durin and Disa then argue about going to the king. Next we see Elrond working away on boats at the Grey Havens, where Galadriel pitches him on joining the company to go to Eregion. Elrond is really not letting Galadriel off the hook here, which is good. I definitely could have done without the reminder of Galadriel and Halbrand giving googly eyes in Season 1 though. My word, Celeborn cannot get here soon enough. I truly cannot wait until the Haladriel nonsense is done with. It has to be one of the most baffling things to arise from this show. Elrond rejects Galadriel's request, and we get a nice scene with Círdan where the Elder Elf brings some nice wisdom to the situation. Círdan drops a couple names here. First, Círdan mentions Rhûmil's verses, before saying the poet was a drunkard. Now, I can't speak to the latter claim, but Rhûmil was an elf of Valinor, famous for devising written letters, known as the Tengwar of Rhûmil. He then says, do not ask of Daeron, who was insufferable but had a lovely singing voice. This made me chuckle as Daeron is the elf who coveted Luthien and betrayed her love for the human Beren to her father. Círdan basically says to judge the work and leave the judgment of the makers to Eru, the god of Tolkien's world. He goes on to say Elrond is right to fear what these rings could do in Sauron's hands, but it's his most trusted friends who currently have them. Again, overall, I'm really enjoying the character of Círdan in this show. He's got this great ethereal quality and wisdom about him that seems the most elven of all the characters in the show. His line about guiding those who have gone astray rather than abandoning them is great stuff. Next, the stranger and the hobbits come to a well and we see the flag in the shot has the same eye logo. The well has kind of a clever trick where when the rope is let down it sounds a bell. Unless of course you were to slowly lower it, but they don't do that, so the riders show up. But before that, the stranger finds the staff from his dreams. And when the riders attack, he slams the staff down reciting something in Quenya. I couldn't quite make out the entire phrase, but I believe I caught the word lenatulie, which can mean depart, so perhaps he's issuing a command for them to leave. The ground pound gets the dust flying and one of the Easterlings exclaims, Zigur. What's interesting here is that this is actually an Adunaic word, the Númenórean language. It translates to wizard. In fact, when Sauron comes to Númenor, he is known as Zigur. Now we don't have any words from the Easterling language save one, Khamûl, the name of the second greatest of the Nazgûl. The dust storm goes crazy and his staff disintegrates. The hobbits fly away, never to be seen again, but probably not. Next we get a really cool moment where Celebrimbor invents Ithildin. Made by the elves, this is the mithril-derived substance that makes the doors of Durin visible by the reflected light of the moon and stars. Yet more evidence that the doors of Durin should be on their way later this season. We then get a scene of Sauron playing Celebrimbor like a fiddle, lying about talking with Galadriel, then playing on Celebrimbor being in the dark about the rings. Celebrimbor asks about the rings, wondering if they worked, and is ecstatic to hear that they've saved all Elvendom. Sauron goes on to ask Celebrimbor to make rings for men, and confesses his name is not Halbrand, and that he's not even mortal. Halbrand disappears after the shutters blow open, and Brimby knocks over his first age wine, so that's a bummer. And then we finally get the emergence of the Lord of Gifts himself, ANNATAR. He promises that using ANNATAR's knowledge will make Celebrimbor be remembered forever as the Lord of the Rings. Spoiler alert, he will not be the one with that title. I gotta say, this is a pretty great entrance for ANNATAR, and Celebrimbor totally falls for this, and I think they did a believable job here. It is a bit clumsy with the way Sauron says, I'm a sharer of gifts, ANNATAR, and then Celebrimbor says, ANNATAR, Lord of Gifts. It seems the sharer of gifts line is kind of redundant and could have just been cut. But overall, I think it's a strong entrance for a character many book fans like myself were really hoping to see in Season 1. Next we find out that Elrond has agreed to travel to Eregion, but it's revealed he'll be leading the company, not just joining it. This is played up super dramatically. Like, Gil-galad is pretty extra when delivering this line. Still, this is probably a wise move. Elrond is kinda the voice of reason so far, and Círdan helped set him on this path to guiding his friends. Lastly, we get Durin the Fourth getting an invitation for the dwarves to come to Eregion. Cut to black, end of episode. One thing from the credits we do see is Ciarán Hinds is credited as Dark Wizard. So there we have it, a quarter of the season down. I think the issue of the 3 elven rings already existing continues to have some undesirable consequences lore-wise. Sauron is gonna give his knowledge and guidance to Celebrimbor to take him to a new level, yet he's already created the greatest of the Rings of Power. It's a bit contradictory in a way. Still, I'm glad we are getting some form of ANNATAR and Celebrimbor, and hope it'll do justice to the story fans have been dying to see play out. But what did you think of this episode? Are you with me on Team Blue Wizards? What did you think of ANNATAR's introduction? Let me know in the comments, and we'll see you for my episode 3 breakdown coming up next. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.